Welcome to Her Story of Success, a podcast featuring stories of influential women trailblazers and business leaders who have defined and pursued their own versions of success and fulfillment. We hope these stories, lessons learned, and celebrations inspire you to believe in yourself and your own journey a little bit more. I am Leah Glover Hayes, CEO and podcast host of Her Story of Success, Women's Business Media Collective. In today's episode, I am excited to be interviewing Lisa Powers Struble, owner and CEO of Banded, an amazing fashion accessories company that's on a mission to create great products and serve an even greater purpose. They've provided meals to more than 10.4 million undernourished children, and they also partner with companies to help vulnerable women learn to thrive. Before she discovered Banded, Lisa held vice president roles at Abercrombie & Fitch and Under Armour. She has 25 years of experience in the apparel industry, and she's been featured in Sourcing Journal, Nashville Fashion Week, and Textile Excellence, and so much more. We encourage you to share this episode with a girlfriend or a peer who's looking for some motivation and inspiration this week. So welcome, Lisa.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
We have so much to cover. You are one of those women that the more I learn about you, the more excited I am to get to know you more. So part of this podcast is about mentorship and being just allowing my listeners to hear my mentor session. So this is going to be fun. You're like my mentor for the day.
Awesome.
Fun. So I had heard a couple of your other interviews talking about just how you grew up, and you were always like fashion and forward and a designer. You would doodle and draw things when you were watching Cyndi Lauper and Madonna, which, I mean, I think we're around the same age. So I totally watched MTV and did that too. But my drawing skills were not that great. So, I saw that you went to school at MTSU for fashion. So that's awesome. So let's talk a little bit about, okay, you've always wanted to be in fashion. You went to school for it. Talk to me about getting your first jobs, like whether it was in high school, college. Let's talk about your very first job and then how that led to the career path that you've had for over 25 years in retail.
Absolutely. Well, my very first jobs were babysitting. I had lots of younger cousins and things like that. I used to babysit 5 little ones at once on, weekends, things like that. So, I started off with babysitting. I also grew up in a really, really small town. So there really were just very few places to work. So I think once I decided enough with the kids, I actually went to work at Walmart. I actually met my husband working at Walmart between high school and college.
Oh, wow. At the Wally World. I love it. And what town are you from? Because I heard that you graduated with, 60-something people? I'm from a small town and graduated with, I think there were 92 of us. So I totally feel you on the lack of opportunity in a small town.
Yeah, I grew up in McEwen, Tennessee. And I actually had to drive through 2 towns just to get to the Walmart. So, but like you said, I knew I wanted to do fashion. So I was trying to find anything retail related. And there were maybe 1 or 2 small boutiques, but I, for some reason, didn't get the job there. So I'm like, well, Walmart it is. So, I was just always kind of thinking, I'm from a really small town. I was a little nervous about, how I was going to get my foot in the door with fashion. I didn't know anybody in fashion. All the adults in my life were certainly worried for me in that in that way. So, I just tried to do anything I could do. And so working any kind of retail I thought was smart. And then in college, one summer I actually worked in a denim manufacturing factory that I found in the next town. And I'm like, okay, well, I've got retail. Now I've got some manufacturing. Okay, that's 2 things, I can check off my list. And honestly, those really did help me get my first jobs out of college. There was one other job that happened that was kind of unique. I had heard that there was a lingerie company that had opened up in, again, another town over. And I was driving back from college one day and I, put on my nice little outfit and I just stopped in and said, hi, I'm from McEwen and I heard you've started some sort of lingerie company. Is there anything I can do to help? And the lady immediately just looked at me and said, you're a fashion student? Oh my gosh, we can use your help. And so
Oh,
Yeah, it was
yay.
kind of crazy. She said, "Can you make patterns?" And I was currently in a pattern making class. And I said, "Yeah, I can make patterns." And she said, "Can you grade patterns?" And I couldn't actually, but I said, "Yeah, I can grade patterns." And, "Can you sew?" And I said, "Well, I can sew a little, I'm not great, but I can sew up a sample." So she said, "Great, we can use you." So, I went to see my professor the next Monday and said, "I got to learn how to grade patterns." And she said, "There's a book over there." So, I just was very self-taught with
I
some of that
love
and just,
it.
sometimes you really do just have to say yes and then figure it out. But those things are what helped me get my foot in the door.
Well, and I want to pause on that because you said yes before you knew how to do it, but you were already in a class. So it wasn't a far stretch. You're not saying yes to something that you had no comprehension of,
Right.
that wasn't in your wheelhouse. You said yes to something that was like, I can do these 3 other things around
Yes.
it. I bet that my professor or in my class, like, I bet I can figure that out because it's already in something that you're doing. So let's talk about, okay, so that was in college. So you have a job that is in fashion. It's both the creative side. So you have to like do the patterns, and it sounds like the manufacturing side, you had that. Once you were coming up to graduation, what is it? Did you already know what you wanted to do? Like, did you already have this vision of like, this is what I want to do in fashion? Or were you still trying to figure it out? And what did that process look like maybe after graduation because you moved away from Tennessee. So what did that maybe process look like for you from graduating to getting your first job
Well, I mean,
out
to
of
be honest,
school?
I was just trying to find a job. I was very realistic in my expectations. I wasn't going to go get a job at a major design house. I wasn't going to go to New York. I'll back up just a little bit. I actually got married while I was in college and had my daughter
Oh, wow.
between my junior and senior year. So I had a little one to think about also. And growing up in a really small town, I just knew I wasn't going to be comfortable moving someplace like LA or New York to, and I was trying to learn how to raise a child. And, to do that in a big city I didn't understand was just too overwhelming for me. So, I might have been brave enough to say I could do a few things, but I wasn't brave enough for that. But I did know that I would have to move. I mean, Nashville now is a pretty big fashion hub, but at that time it was
Yeah.
not.
Not at all.
It was not at all. So I knew when I chose fashion, I was going to have to move to wherever the jobs were. So
Yeah.
I sent out resumes wherever I could find an address. Again, I'm really going to tell my age, but there was no searching on the internet. There was no applying on the internet. I was, slugging it over to the library on campus and just looking up anything I could find that had business addresses or any kind of job openings, things like that. So I just sent things out and just kind of waited for that God moment for something to come through because I had zero connections. But I did get my first job through one of my instructors. She randomly got a call from a recruiter, and they were really looking for somebody just like me. They did not want someone from a big fashion school or from a big city because the job was actually located in the Shenandoah Valley in Virginia, which was gorgeous, by the way. But they're like, there's absolutely nothing to do here. Like, there's not going to be going out and partying. And they're like, oh no, have we got the girl for you?
Already married, got a
Exactly.
little one, does not have any desire for
She's
that.
a great student. She's not a partier. She has a little girl. Like, she's looking for a nice spot for her family. And she was a fantastic student. So that's how I actually got my first job, which was with a company called Eileen, which is no longer, but it was great. It was fantastic because they actually still did manufacturing in the US. So I was able to do design work, but also, walk across the building and see printing, see embroidery, see knitting machines. And I mean, it was really amazing. And that is so hard to find these days. And the job didn't last long. They went bankrupt. Actually, the first 3 companies that I worked for went bankrupt. But I just took in everything I could and learned whatever I could from each one of them and made connections at each one of them. And yeah, so it was a rough start into the fashion industry, but again, I knew it's what I wanted and it kept working out.
Yeah. What what was that conversation like? So, I mean, you were married, you have, you had a spouse, you had a little one to think about. When you started to look at these other places to work and you start putting out all of these resumes and things, what did that conversation, like, what does he do? What was his trade or what was his job that he was like, yep, I will move with you wherever you get a job? What was that dynamic like when you were young married?
It sounds more difficult than it was because I always knew what I wanted to do. So he knew from the minute we started dating, like, these are my intentions. And he was always
Okay.
along for the ride. I don't know that we would have gotten beyond dating if he had not felt that way, because I was very driven in what I wanted to do. And I mean, it's just such a great story of, he was totally up for it. He was definitely the right soulmate for me, and hopefully vice versa. We're still together. Yeah. So he was fine with it because it was just always in the cards. I mean, he certainly, I would say, well, is there any place you don't want to live? He agreed with me. Maybe we weren't quite ready to move into a big city. We wanted to stay as close as we could to our family, but we knew we were going to take the job wherever we could. He actually had not graduated yet. So the whole idea was for me to, get a job, make some money. He could go back to school, get his degree. So he was very open to it as long as there was a school that he could go to.
Okay. And then what did it look like? So you have a little one, you get a job, but you move away from your family. So what did your village, or what did your childcare and how did that look when you moved to a new city for a new job and you have a little family?
Well, it kind of varied. Like I say, I worked 3 different places in 3 different years, and we had to move states each time. So there was a lot of moving early in our marriage, and we decided that was not fun after that. But yeah,
this is not what we want to do.
Yeah. So, I mean, with the first move, honestly, he was still in school, and, he did a little work part-time, but he watched her when he could. And then we just found someone local to do daycare. My daughter's always been in daycare, and, we think she's smarter for it. So, she's very, very independent, and that started very early on. But the other thing I actually found, kind of a tribe of people at work. And actually, it was kind of odd. I was probably one of the only person in my early 20s at least one of these jobs, probably 2 of them, actually. But what I found is people wanted to mother me a little bit, or some of the men, especially who ran various things in manufacturing. They just kind of took me under their wing, and I just, I'm like, great, you want to treat me like a daughter? I'm going to let you, because my parents are far away. So, I never really had an ego as long as I was, respected and treated well. But, anybody who wanted to teach me something, I was just like, great. And I think that must be rare, because people really warm up to that. When somebody new shows up and says, hey, I'm really interested in what you do. Can you teach me what I need to know about it? And I really learned so much that way. And I found people's daughters, teenage daughters, who wanted to babysit my child and things like that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and a local
That's
church,
awesome.
things like that. So just word of mouth, but really kind of had to create my own little mini family once we moved, because you definitely can't do it by yourself.
Oh gosh, no. There's none of us can do it by ourselves. Whether you are single, married, have kids, don't have kids. I'm like, I need my own I need my own village just for myself. I'm like, oh, that's really going to come into effect if I do have children. So let's talk about because I do want to talk a little bit about your transitions, right? So you had, the first 3 years you had 3 different jobs because all of the businesses went out. But then you went to work for a pretty big company. Let's talk a little bit about the Abercrombie and Fitch. So what did that role look like when you started, and did you do the same role for the entire time that you were there for 16 years? Like, what did that progression look like within Abercrombie?
Yeah, well, when I went to Abercrombie, I was really looking for something stable. I mean, I would have taken whatever I could find, but at the same time, I really wanted something that was more stable, had some groundwork. It was my first time in a corporate environment, so that was very exciting. The funny thing is I actually was not excited about the job at Abercrombie at all, because I had been doing creative design and a lot of other things being with small companies. But the job at Abercrombie was as an assistant technical designer. And I got a call from this recruiter, and she said, do you want to apply? And I said, well, I don't even know what it is. Like, tell me what a technical
what does
designer
technical
does. It was fairly new in the industry at that time. And when she explained it to me, I'm like, oh, well, I do all of that now. I just do the creative stuff too. So, okay, yeah, let's pursue this. So I went and I interviewed, and it was such a different environment from where I'd been at. Everyone was very young and very cool. And, this just was crazy. We were actually at that time, Abercrombie shared a building with Victoria's Secret. So it was just it was very big for me. It was just a whole different thing. And I did start off as an assistant. There were only actually, I think, about 150 people at the Abercrombie offices when I started. And wow. It was very, very small. And I was only the 5th technical designer that was hired. And wow. And if you were to read my resume, it reads very linearly. I went from, assistant to associate to designer to manager to director to VP. So I did sort of the same job the whole time, but what really happened is I became somebody who mentored other people and who, led a team. And at one time, I think I had 150 technical designers under me.
Wow. Yeah, you were one of 5 to leading 150 people.
Yeah, it was really big. And it scaled back a little bit after that, like during the recession, things like that. But it was always a very big group. And while I worked for Abercrombie, it was really interesting because we added Abercrombie Kids Store. We added the Hollister brand, the Gilly Hicks brand, the Rule brand. So I really got to see, brands born from conception while I worked there. And that was super cool. And we went global. I had team members that were based in Hong Kong, and I traveled a ton. That was one of the things I loved about Abercrombie is, I'm this little girl from McEwen, Tennessee, and I'd always wanted to travel, and boy, did I travel. I mean, I went all over the world with Abercrombie, and that was amazing.
Oh gosh, that's so fun. So let's talk a little bit about that transition from Abercrombie to Under Armour. And then because I really want to focus on Banded and the company that you are the CEO. And I read that you ended up buying the company. So I want to talk a little bit about that. But the thing that I want to focus on is how did you know it was time to transition? Did you feel a new season coming up? What did that feel like? And how did you maybe take yourself through the process of knowing, here's what I need next, here's where I'm going to go? Because we talk a lot on this podcast about seasons, and how do you know when you're coming to an end of a season, and how do you prepare for that next season while you're in the one that you're in?
Yeah, that's a great thing to kind of think about, because I knew when it was time to leave Abercrombie. And I mean, I was there 15 years, and it was an amazing opportunity and just an amazing ride. But honestly, I stayed there too long, and I did it for all the right reasons. I knew that I was ready to move on, but I didn't feel like my family was ready to move on yet. And I mean, goodness knows they had hung in there with me and moved all over with me. And so I had to wait until the time was right for all of us. And I had explored it a couple of years earlier and actually had a great job offer. And then when it came down to it, just in my gut, just had to turn it down. I just knew it wasn't right for us. So I stayed a little longer than I should, and I really wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. And one of the things I think you have to be careful at is if you stay someplace too long, you can really start to have some crazy thoughts. I'm like, gosh, I don't even know if I want to be in this industry anymore. Maybe I just need to take a break. And I just really didn't know what I wanted to do next. And then Under Armour called, and I kind of didn't even answer the email for the first couple of times because I just wasn't interested, to be honest. And then it kind of started just kind of kept popping back up in my brain. And I'm like, why do I keep even thinking about this? Because if I was going to stay in fashion, I thought maybe I wanted to do something much more high fashion. And Under Armour was kind of the exact opposite of that. It was performance gear. But I just kept thinking about it. And then I thought about it. And I had done quite a bit of performance gear over the years. We had some gym things, swim, lingerie is very performance driven in its own way, So I was kind of like, okay, well, just go check it out. And my husband's like, what do you have to lose? Go check it out. And my daughter was away at college by that time. And So I went to Baltimore and just kind of fell in love with the company, the city there on the harbor. And I just came back and told my husband, I'm like, it just felt so natural with everyone I interviewed with that would be a peer.
Yeah.
It just felt right. And I got just super excited about it. So, and I was just, it's one of those rare instances where they really needed something very specific. And I was exactly the right candidate for it. And there aren't
Wow.
a ton of people in the industry who have the same background that I do. I mean, I can literally think of a handful. We all know each other. I mean, it's kind of funny. We've all crossed paths.
You're like, no, I
Um,
know. That's awesome.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I could name off the other people that would have been appropriate for the job, but it was just perfect for me. What I was coming in to do, and it was great. I was there for about 5 years. I was like, well, maybe I'll stay for 2 and then whatever, but I just absolutely loved it. So
That's
after
awesome.
5 years though, I was like, gosh, I've actually done more here than I ever thought I would do. And I had a great succession plan set up, and it just felt like time to move on. And I had conversations with them about, well, what's next? And I kind of knew what was next anyway, being part of the leadership team there, but I just wasn't excited about any of the things that were next. And I should
Yeah.
have been, but I just wasn't. So I didn't rush
Right.
it. I mean, I spent probably a good year like starting those conversations with people and just really kind of exploring things and thinking about it. And when it came down to it, it kind of became a life thing too. My husband's father passed away, and my
Mm.
mother had a stroke, and his mother was having hip replacement. It's just like, we joke with him. We're like,
Oh,
okay,
wow.
all of our parents kind of started to fall apart right at the same time. And we're like, come on,
Yeah.
guys. And, if I couldn't get excited about what was next in my career at that point, it just made sense to move back home. Um,
Yeah.
so, there was a lot going on, and we just decided, we were in a position that we could take a breath and kind of move home and then decide what was next. We told everybody we were just retiring early and then we'd figure it out. And it's kind of is what we
Yeah.
did. Yeah. So things
I
didn't go
love
quite as
it.
planned, but we
They
knew.
never do. Let's be real. It just doesn't hit the
No,
plan.
no.
So I love that. So you just took a break. You were done. We're gonna move home. When you were on that break, obviously, you're caring for your family and seeing them a lot. What did you do during that time that helped you understand like what you wanted to do next? Like, how did you use that break to be able to lay the foundation to now, when you learned about Banded? What did that time look like?
Yeah, it was a really hard time for me for reasons we didn't expect. Right after we moved, my husband actually became very ill. He has a really aggressive case of Lyme disease that was very difficult to diagnose and has been incredibly difficult to treat. So we're on about year 3 of trying to figure this out. So when I say nothing went as planned, nothing went as planned. We did get moved. We moved into a great neighborhood. We, really kind of reconnected with siblings and all of that. But he got sick pretty quickly. So we had planned to just kind of have a home base in Tennessee, just travel for a little while, just enjoy getting out and traveling without the pressure of work, and then figure it out. But that didn't really happen. So I had kind of kept my toes in the industry anyway, because I had thought, well, I'll probably at least want to do some sort of consulting or whatever. And I just have so many friends in the industry that I was staying connected anyway. So, the resume was updated, LinkedIn was updated, like everything was ready to go kind of just in case. And I don't think that that's a bad thing to do, because it definitely worked out for me. I mean, I was literally laying on my couch watching Friends in the middle of the day, being super lazy, and I got a notification on LinkedIn saying, "Hey, there's a job in your area that you might be interested in," and it was Banded. And I looked at Banded, and I'm like, "Well, that looks kind of cool." I'd never heard of the company, but there were some weird connections there too. So I immediately applied. Because the give back just got me. I'd been telling my husband, like, okay, like we never intended to sit home and stare at each other all day. Like maybe I need to go like volunteer or find a nonprofit or something. So when Bandit came
Yeah.
up, that give back aspect of the brand just really hooked me. And I'm like, well, maybe I can do both. Maybe I can like keep a foot in the career and do good and give back. And it was just like the perfect combination for me. So, happened just very naturally. And the other thing that really got me is when I lived in Baltimore, I had picked up this book at like the giant Barnes and Nobles down there, just out of the blue. And it was called Kisses from Katie. And That was
Oh, yeah.
actually the organization that Banded first started supporting through their give back. And I had
Oh,
just
yeah.
randomly picked it up and felt such a connection to that book because the girl in the book is the same age as my daughter, approximately. And I thought, oh my gosh, I love my daughter, but can I imagine her going to Uganda and adopting 13 children at the, age of 20? No.
No.
So yeah, had just been so amazed by that story and it had stuck with me. So then when I found Bandit and found that connection, I don't know, it just kind of felt like a God thing, just all these little connections that happened. And so I
Yeah.
came on board and just fell in love with the team and the product and the give back. And when I had the opportunity to take over the company, I jumped at it.
So what did it look like when you were approached for to take over Banded? Like, did the owners come to you, or what did that process look like, and what made you know that like you wanted to do it?
Sure. Well, the owner of the company and I had been very honest with each other from the very beginning. Because when I first came in and interviewed, I mean, I wasn't in a position where I had to take any kind of job. And I was just really upfront with him about that, saying, hey, if this works for me and it works for you, that's great. Let's see how this goes. And, when I first came in, he's like, look, I can't pay you your corporate salary. And I was like, you know what? I don't need that right now. And maybe we can look at, equity in the business or things like that. So almost from day one, he made it very clear to me that, he was, what did he say? He did not have a passion for fashion. He was really more of an investor and kind of an inventor. And the Banded brand was kind of born out of an innovation hub. And I was super interested in Banded, and there were other things I was not interested at all. And we just always had very honest, conversations. So I kind of knew even when I stepped in the door that that he was probably going to sell. I even went with him on to meet somebody who wanted to buy. And that's kind of what did it for me, because I came back and went, yeah, those were nice people, but I don't want to work for them. I don't really want to work for anybody else right now, because it had been very hands off since I'd come to Bandit. I had kind of stepped in and just started kind of running the brand. And I didn't really want that to change. So I just said, well, okay, neither one of us are necessarily feeling this for, I don't know, just our own individual reasons. It wasn't quite feeling right. And I said, well, instead of selling to them, why don't you sell to me? And, let's see if we can work something out. So, it was just kind of always on the table from the beginning. I just had to be the one to finally take a big gulp and say the words.
I love it. I love it. I love your I don't know, just your belief in yourself and what you're doing. So what is it that during all of these times, what has been that anchor for you when you were afraid or when you had hard times? I'm sure that your road wasn't just sunshine and rainbows at any of the companies, but what is it that really helped you keep going and say, I can do this. This is where I need to be.
That's I don't know that anyone's ever really asked me that, but I mean, certainly my family, my husband was my rock. We got married when we were 20 years old. We've been dating since 18.
Wow.
So, we very much just kind of learned to adult together. And then my daughter's been a part of that since the very beginning. So just a really strong family anchor. And, I love what I do. I always have, but I knew I could lose a job and still be okay because I had my family. And as long as we were together and we were healthy and, whatever, we were going to be fine. And that also just comes from faith. I mean, I have a really strong faith. I believe in God. I believe somebody's looking out for me, and that has been proven in my life time and time again. I just think that's it. I have parents I could fall back on. I have brother and sister. Money got tight lots of times, especially early on. But, I've been fortunate to never really have to worry about like where my next meal is going to come from. Maybe what bill got paid every now and then, but for the most part, yeah. So I don't know. I've just always had a faith that, I'm going to be taken care of. I'm going to have a roof over my head. I'm going to have a meal. And, as long as you've got that in your family, you'll figure the rest out. And I think that maybe that just takes the pressure off a little bit. Like if you're like, I can live very simply, everything else is just, icing on the cake. And I think maybe that is part of it, because we always lived well below our means. Even when I had an executive salary for years and years, yes, I told you we took fabulous trips, and I had nice clothes, I had nice things, but it was never something that I needed. So maybe that allowed me to look at some things differently, because I wasn't so worried about losing it.
Right. When did you get to the place that you're like, okay, we have the emergency fund, we have the savings, like no matter what happens, we're going to be okay for at least 6 months to a year. At what point in your career did you get to the place where you had an emergency fund, or have you always kind of been there?
No, we were definitely not always there. It's so funny because people who are getting married now ask me like, well, did you and your husband have a joint account? And I said, well, yeah, because I had like $20 and he had 40, so at least together we had, there was absolutely no reason.
But we got married at 20 in college.
I'm not
like
even
we had
joking.
nothing.
I think we had
oh my God.
less than $200 between us when we got married in college. So yeah, one fund was more than enough from us from the very beginning. But no, I would say it was probably a couple of years into Abercrombie where I really got comfortable because I had some momentum. It wasn't like I was working somewhere then getting laid off, and using up any savings that we had. And, my husband graduated from the Ohio State while we were there. He'd be so proud. I said the Ohio State. While we were there. So especially once we got to 2 incomes, then, we started to feel very comfortable. But, my parents and his parents both, neither one of us come from any kind of wealth. But, I was very much taught to save from my very first babysitting job. My parents said, you're going to put 10% in a bank account, you're going to pay 10% to the church, and you're going to, do whatever you want with the rest of it. So from, a really young age, I was taught to save. And my husband and I just really took that approach all throughout our marriage. And, if we wanted something, like I remember one year we needed to finish our basement. We waited until I got a bonus and could pay for it. We needed to add a deck. We waited till I got a bonus and then we paid for it. And my big thing,
I love it.
Yeah, we never went into debt for anything obviously a house and, a car occasionally. But for the most part, we waited until we had it and then we spent it. And that worked out really great for us. And my big thing was I wanted my daughter to be able to go to college wherever she wanted. And especially once we knew we had money set aside for college, I was just like, and we're done if we want to be, so yeah, that really was a great feeling of financial freedom. And we really didn't get a financial advisor. We got one much later than we should have, but we did fine. We saved our money. We paid off all our bills. We never had credit card debt after the first couple of years. And but then when it kind of finally started to say, okay, well, it doesn't make sense to have a lot of money in the bank. We do need to get an advisor. So we actually did not do that until I started at Under Armour. So very late in my career. But again, we were doing the right things. We were saving money. We were paying bills. We weren't taking on debt. So yeah, that's okay too.
Yeah, there's just something about having that security of like, okay, God forbid, if something happens, we will be okay. It allows you to make choices from a place of opportunity and not scarcity, right? And being able to take risks. People talk about taking risks. It's like, I love that Richard Branson's like, I take calculated risks. Like, I'm not this like complete crazy person. He is like a little bit crazy. That's why I love him. But I just really appreciated that he's like, I take calculated risks. And I feel like having some sort of stability allows you to do that. So I did want to ask though, so you are, you've been a VP, you've been an executive at some of these larger companies. Let's talk about the difference in being an executive and being an business owner, because that is a lot of responsibility. It's all of the responsibility, right? It's not some of it. Like, yes, you had 150 people underneath you, but now like you have a company that is dependent upon the decisions you make, how well you steer the ship, and all those things. So can you talk to us about maybe the moment of reality of maybe the fear of like, oh my gosh, I own this. This is all on me now.
Yeah, I honestly, I live with that probably to some degree every single day. And it is much harder than I thought it would be. There's so many things that I learned in my career that I have been able to bring over to me, but it is very different, and it is more different than I expected. And people that I talk to who've known me a long time are surprised by that. People that I've kind of grown up in my career where they're like, well, what do you mean? You should be great at that. And I'm like, it's just different. There's this amazing sense of freedom for sure when you're kind of calling the shots and, you own your own business. But there's also just like this huge financial burden because you I've always felt responsible for the people that worked for me, and I always tried to treat money as if it were my company. Like, would I spend this if it were
Yes.
my company? I was taught to do that early on. I think it served me very well. But it is different, and the financial strain that comes with owning your own company, and especially one that gives back. I mean, I want to compensate everyone fairly. I mean, you got to pay for talent, and I want to do that. But you know what? Nobody's getting rich off Banded. Hopefully everyone's very well compensated. I believe we all are, but we are giving back, and that is not an easy thing to do. So things are always tight here. And quite frankly, they probably always will be, because, the more you grow, the more money you need for inventory. And there's just always a cash flow issue. And that has probably been the biggest learning. Absolutely, the biggest learning for me is just figuring that out. And I think I've got it figured out now for Banded. But you know what? Then again, no, I haven't, because this last year just kind of sent us for a spin. Although we recovered quickly and we're doing well, but it just is very different. The sense of stress that comes from, wanting to make sure your employees feel secure in their jobs, that everyone's fairly compensated, that you're honoring your promises for sure to your consumers and your accounts. And it's a lot. I absolutely love it. I said I wanted to learn something different. I felt like I had been, like I say, on a very linear path for a long time. And I had done that job inside and out, and I didn't want to go somewhere else and do that same job. I really wanted to grow and stretch. And again, I have a little bit of financial security personally to be able to take that risk. And
Yeah.
I don't know, I learn something every day, and I love that about what I do. Sometimes I wish I would learn a little faster. and on
Oh, don't we all?
And
Yes.
but you know what? You also just have to take a step back and say, you know what? Maybe you messed that up, but there's a lot of things where I'm getting right, and just build from that. And there's always mentors out there, and I have not taken great advantage of mentors. It's been a lot going on in my life with owning the business, with my husband's health, and obviously now with the pandemic. So I haven't actually been able to reach out and probably get all of the mentors and help that would make this easier for me. And I do plan to do that go forward. But at the same time, you know what? We're successful. We're doing well. We love coming to work every day. We love what we make. We love who we serve. And so, all in all, it's pretty
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, I would love to help you on the mentor front. There is an incredible, I mean, because you're even just locally in the Nashville area, there's so many incredible women business owners that are in retail, that are in fashion. Like you said, I mean, Nashville has grown so much in the fashion world. I mean, we have a Nashville Fashion Week. That's amazing.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that I'm connected to a lot of business owners. So I'd love to help you find some people that kind of have that same heart and passion for, because it is different. You don't just own a company, you own a company that gives back, that has that aspect of it, and that is different, right? It's going to look different than other companies. So that's awesome. Let's talk a little bit about some products. So I love Band. I literally just bought one of those. You can make it into a tie. I forget what it's called. I was a cheerleader, and so we wore bows, and now you have these really pretty velvet bows, which I'm super jazzed about. And you also have I saw things for babies, like the sleepers.
Yeah.
So were you there when you started adding those things, or was that something that you're like, hey, I think that we should add some products? Like, what does that look like? Because to me, Banded was like, oh, you just did headbands. So what did the adding of different products look like, and why did you guys start that?
Yeah, well, that's actually one of the reasons that I was brought into the company originally was,
Okay.
our headbands are fantastic. They really are. And that's what the brand was built around. But, at some point, I think we realized you can only sell so many headbands. And there's just so many other things that make sense to sell along with that when you're, talking to a boutique or whatever. They don't necessarily just want that. They want a wider range of products. So Baby was actually, was already being done by Banded, but mostly in the baby bows, headbands, things like that were a really natural transition is how it started. And then because we were getting a lot of business from a lot of baby stores, hospital gift shops, we kind of moved more into what I call like a layette type product. And that is where the little sleepers and rompers and things like that come in. So they were in development when I started. We kind of paused and said, okay, is this really what we want to do? And we decided it did make sense because we were selling to the same customer and we were selling to the same shop. And that was actually one of the things I've had to do since coming here is just kind of strip away products that don't make sense for banded. So hair ties, scrunchies, the padded headbands, the velvet one that you just talked about, those are great product extensions. Bobby pins and clips, like basically just all of the hair things make sense. And because we already have a customer base for it, a lot of that baby layette still makes sense for us. But there were a lot of other things that, as a design group, people were chasing that were really just a big distraction because it wasn't the same customer. You couldn't sell it to the same people in the same way at the same trade shows. And you almost needed a completely different team for that. So we've kind of really taken a big step back and said, we have to focus. We want to make great product. We want to feed kids. And there's only a few of us to do all of that. And so we really did have to kind of rein it all in and just do what makes sense for the brand. And that's been super fun. That's actually one of the things that I really missed being mostly in technical design on my career was the creative part. So I love working with our creative director and our graphic designers, coming up with the new collections and the colors and the prints. We're about to launch our spring summer collection, which is Mediterranean, and it is vibrant colors. It's, it's simple, but it's bold, and it's gorgeous neon colors. And we've got new cotton bandanas. We've got huge chiffon scrunchies, and, it's perfect because while we're all hoping to get back out and travel, I would love to take this little collection actually and introduce it to the Mediterranean.
That'd be nice.
But you know what? We've kind of just decided, we had to have happy, positive product and colors this time around. And, whether you're going from your upstairs to your downstairs home office, we really want people just kind of create that mood with the collection. And I absolutely love the design aspects of the company.
That's fun. Well, let's talk a little bit about pivoting. So, you, a lot of your business was, mostly wholesale, selling to boutiques and things. But since, the shutdown, I'm assuming that a lot of those retail spaces were not selling as much because they weren't in business, and a lot of them didn't have the online shopping. I know a couple of the boutiques I go to, we're just trying to figure it out. So for you as a wholesale company, what has that looked like? Were you able to take, and I know now because I purchased it online, but what did that transition look like to be like, oh, we have to sell our own products. We have to do it online and we have to do it quickly.
Yeah, it was, we had a really, I'm going to say a scary week because honestly, we pulled ourselves together really, really quickly. But it happened really fast. I mean, literally within 2 days, for the first time ever, we started getting order cancellations. We had orders returned to us. We got multiple emails. I mean, this literally all happened within 48 hours. We got emails from some of our biggest accounts basically saying, we're not going to be able to pay, or we're extending our payment terms by 90 days. I mean, there was no discussion. And, we really could have panicked, and, but we didn't. I did panic on the inside. I won't lie, but I kept up a good, it's okay, guys, we're going to figure this out. Let's just get the lay of the land and then we'll figure out what we need to do. And we did pivot pretty quickly. Luckily for us, we already had a pretty good online website, a very good online website. And we handle that in-house. So we were able to kind of do whatever we needed to do to kind of ramp that up. We also typically have not really liked for our retailers to also sell online because that conflicts with us. But, in this pandemic, we were like, yeah, we all got to do whatever we can do. So we're not going to put really any parameters on you for that. If you can sell it online, sell it online.
Sell it online. Yeah.
So, we worked it out pretty quickly, but one of the main things that we saw is a lot of our core products, like our core headbands, all of a sudden were in demand. And, those were things that, again, the brand was built around. It was our, velvet back non-slip, and our athletics suddenly really started to sell. And the more fashion items that, we had kind of put more inventory dollars into, they stopped moving, period, for a period of time. So we had to figure out very quickly how to get more of what people needed. And while we were doing that, we also, everybody was talking about masks, and we're like, okay, well, we actually have a product that can be used for a mask. It's not surgical by any means, but it'll do in a pinch, and everybody needed something at the beginning. So we had our infinity head wraps, which, are basically a neck gaiter, or you can wear it around your hair. So we figured out how to wear that as a mask, and we sold some ties and things with it to make it a little more versatile for that. And we leaned into those things that were inherently part of our brand anyway. We very quickly designed and developed a button headband so that, you could take your mask off your ears. We kept seeing all of those pictures on social media of the nurses with just the raw ears. And so we put buttons on the headbands, and we actually took that product from the time we thought of it to available to customers on our website in about 5 weeks, which is pretty darn.
Wow. That's very fast.
And we were able to
From
get more of the
conception to
headbands that
deliver.
people needed really, really quickly too. And that really comes down to just having great manufacturing partners who, we said, okay, here's what we have that we don't need, and here's what we need more of. How fast can we get it? And, shipping was a challenge, but we were able to get everything here. And again, that just really comes from having great supplier relationships. And that's something I had thought about a lot even prior to the pandemic. Thank God I did, because we had really narrowed down the people that, they made good product, but I didn't feel like they were really there to support us in an opportunity. And we found the ones that we felt like were really in it with us to help us grow, and they wanted to grow with us. And, whether we had a problem or we had an opportunity, they were going to, be in there as part of our team. So it was great.
Gosh, there's so many. Absolutely. There's so many lessons in that when you are a business owner, and finding like the relationships matter so much with the vendors, with your suppliers, with distribution. And I think that that's a good point, because you said that you can find the people or find the companies that make a great product, but if that care and that relationship and that isn't as important to them, or it's off, like being able to narrow that down and say, okay, I'm going to work with the ones that get our mission, that are here to support their customers and to make sure that, they want to grow with us. I think that that's a lesson all in itself. Like, finding that. And I mean, would you say a lot of that is just gut, or like, what are the things that you saw that made you say, this is going to be the people that we want to work with, and then here's the people that we're going to maybe shave off?
Well, there were a couple of times that we had, things always happen in manufacturing, and you hope they're just minor things that you can deal with. But, you can really tell who a good partner is when those things happen. And luckily I figured it out on fairly small, minor issues. But I'm like, wow, if this was this hard of a conversation with something small, what if it had been something big? Like, that could have really been devastating. And that's the other thing about being a small business is, it doesn't take much to make or break you. A great account can really make you. If you lose a great account, it can really harm your business. And same with the quality issue, things like that. So there were just some kind of minor red flags along the way. And there were a couple of times we needed something faster than the standard lead time. And when somebody would just quote back to me the standard lead time, when I was clearly saying, hey, we have this great opportunity, but I need it, I need it in 3 weeks instead of 45 days, and they were just like, meh, our lead time is. I'm like, okay, that's not a good partner, because what if we had an amazing opportunity? And we did have one. And, I reached out to all the partners and said, okay, I have a massive order that's very unusual for us, but I need it by this date at this cost. Who wants it? And, that really, that came up at a good time, because I had pretty much figured out who those people were going to be that would jump on it. And I was right. But a lot of it, a lot of it is gut instinct though, because, I've heard my whole career, from a sourcing standpoint, never put all your eggs in one basket. You always want to be diversified, and it all makes sense. But my gut said, you know what, you've got too many suppliers for the size business you are, and you just need a couple of really good ones, because they're going to be there for you. And so I just went with my gut on that.
That's a good balance of, diversifying, but also like not spreading yourself too thin either, especially as a small business. I mean, that's an entrepreneur lesson, like 101, is like just being able, you have to learn that balance for yourself, right? That's probably where some good mentors can come in. But at the end of the day, it does not matter who is giving you guidance or advice. It is not their company. It is yours. And so you have to make the decisions that are going to be best for you, that you can handle, that you can stomach, that you can live with, that you believe in and can move forward on. So I appreciate that. Let's talk a little bit just about some of the maybe lessons that you've learned since becoming an entrepreneur that you can share with the woman listening and give her some encouragement.
I think you just have to, there's definitely an amount of courage involved, and you have to be okay with making mistakes. And luckily that's something I learned a long time ago. I'm very much about design thinking. That's been very hot for the last few years. And I've done like some pretty intense training on design thinking. And a big part of that is experimenting and failing fast. And, that's kind of how I roll here. I'm like, you know what? I weigh the risk for sure. But, if there's some things you just got to try, and you just got to be willing to try. If you fail, you fail. It doesn't mean you're bad or anything. It means you learned something, hopefully. And then you try something.
What are some of those? Yeah. What are some of those things that you tried that you were able to learn quickly that it wasn't going to work, or that I don't like the word failed, but like, what are some of those things that you saw as once you became the owner that you learned very quickly?
One of the things I had to learn was just about how Banded sells product. Online, I pretty much, I knew the basics of it at least. But going to market, we go to market in Atlanta and Dallas and Las Vegas. We stand in a 10 by 15, about a 10 by 15 foot booth with all our product. And I really had to learn about that. And I definitely had some misconceptions. I had to really learn how to build relationships with the sales reps. And they're just like everybody else. There are sales reps who are amazing at their job, and there are some that aren't so great, and there are some that really your brand speaks to them and some where it doesn't. And just kind of navigating all the different sales channels that Banded had, I really had to learn about that, and that was new. And again, I don't know that I really did anything wrong, because I knew enough to know that I didn't understand it. So I tried to just observe. But I definitely have had a lot of misconceptions, and you just have to kind of be very open-minded. There are things I tell my team, like, hey, I know these things, and I feel really good about the decisions here. But when it comes to what apps we're going to put on the website, that is sometimes trial and error. Everybody's going to give you a great ROI, but no one's going to guarantee it, right? So, so kind of learning some things there, just things with contracts. Contracts are not something I've had to deal with a lot. I had to deal with it sometimes with suppliers, sometimes with, fit models and things like that in my past job. But, one of the things that as a small business owner, it just didn't even occur to me. I'm looking at who our phone service is with, and our internet, and are we going to use UPS or FedEx? And there's contracts involved with all of those things. And a lot of what I found, they were not good. Like, we did not have good terms. Unfortunately, we were kind of in the middle of some of them. But, as soon as things came up, I was able to kind of renegotiate and stuff like that. But, that's been where I've made a few missteps, and that's where I've made some great decisions. And, it is what it is. You learn as you go, but it's a lot of just those very, business oriented things.
You've been interviewed over the years quite a few times. If you're talking to thousands of women, what's the one thing that you want them to know?
I think it's just to find what you're good at and what you love. And hopefully they'll end up being the same thing. And just be open to things, because, I told you, I didn't want the job at Abercrombie when I went there. It was like the part of my job I'd always done that I actually didn't like. It was really weird, but I needed the job. I needed the stability for my family at that time. And I just dove into it. And I was very skeptical of whether or not I was going to like it, but it turned out I was good at it. And I think that you enjoy what you're good at, and there's a sense of accomplishment there. And that is actually one of the things, actually with my daughter and her generation, I've seen a lot. I had the hardest time getting her to apply for certain jobs that I knew she would be great at, but she was missing a part. She'd say, but it says I have to have all of these things, and I don't have these things. I'm like, but you have the other 8. So what if you don't have 2? And I think that that's something that, especially young women, for some reason, and I don't know why that is, but I think that we talk ourselves out of jobs that we're perfectly capable for because we think that we have to already have all the parts. And I'll say this too, I have watched a lot of women and men in our careers. And it seems to me that men tend to go after promotions and get promotions that they're not quite ready for. They haven't already done the job, but they just, they've done this one well. So of course the next one's going to be fine. Whereas women almost always have to have already been doing the job, prove that they've done the job. And I don't know if that's to ourselves or if it's to the people around us, probably both, before we actually go after that promotion and or get that promotion. And I've seen that time and again, and I don't really know why that is, but that is one of the things that I've really noticed. And actually, I'm so glad you asked me that question because it is something I have felt like bringing up to people. And the other thing that we as women do a lot, I was taught to make myself very small physically. I mean, I have a lot of confidence, like that. But when I go into
that's one of the reasons I love you.
But seriously, when I go into a room still to this day, I'm like, my purse is under my chair, my books are right in front of me. I'm sitting, I'm very physical. I mean, I'm only like 5'4" anyway.
You're not taking up space.
Exactly.
Okay.
So it's like,
wow.
Whereas, I watch my husband and his brothers, and especially a lot of the men that I worked with at Under Armour that were just big, previous football player, big people. They would walk into a room, fling their books on the desk, sprawl out in the chair. I mean, they're practically taking up a whole side of the table. And then, here's me being all small. And I don't know why that is, but I'm like, it's something that now when I notice that I'm doing it, I try to consciously stop. And I'm like, no, you have to have a presence when you walk in a room. It's okay to take up space. It's okay to spread out. And it's okay to elbow that guy out of the way or that woman if it is. But but yeah, I don't know.
I love
that
it.
We just have to have confidence that we can do things and just go for it. And you don't have to have all the parts already. If you can do most of the parts, you'll figure out the rest.
I love it. I love it. That is so funny that you say that. I mean, there's so much data around that. I will tell you, I'm surprised that it's still happening to young women. Because I thought, we've been in this empowerment movement for so many years for women so now I'm like, not that you have to enter this right now, but now I'm like, where are we failing still our girls that they still aren't doing that? Because I expected you to be like, oh yeah, my 20-something-year-old daughter is so confident and she just goes after all the things because she's watched me do it. She's learned from the other women around me. And yet you're an amazing, super successful woman and your daughter still doesn't. So I'm like, it's not, where is that coming from and how do we then switch it?
Yeah, I don't know, but we definitely have to figure it out.
Yeah. So I have a couple more questions. What have you done during quarantine that you had not previously done? Like what's something that you're like, I'm just going to do this because I can?
I would love to say that I had a lot of hobbies and things like that, but honestly, I worked a lot during quarantine. I was just so focused on making sure that the business was strong and that everybody felt stable. So, we got really creative via work. We shot an entire catalog from home,
Wow.
from our homes, and it looks like we were on location. It was fantastic. So I used
that counts.
I used my creativity. We all did actually in a lot of kind of interesting ways. And I tried to get outside whenever I could. I tried to kind of get back to gardening a little bit. I definitely cooked a lot more. So, some of those things that I'd kind of not done in a while, I did enjoy doing while I was at home.
I love that. And then I know you mentioned one book already, but are there any books or courses that you've taken that have helped shape either you as a leader or in your industry?
Well, I read a lot, so let me throw that out there. I read things
you can give us a few
to absolute garbage sometimes just for escapism. I mean, I read about 100 books a year, so I just kind of
wow.
I'm a really fast
you
reader,
read a lot.
so it's not a big commitment for me to pick up a book. I've definitely read a lot of interesting things. The ones that stick with me are kind of old but goodies. Like Tipping Point really made me change my perspective a little bit. And I think my husband actually gave me that one and said, hey, you're really going to like this. And I read a biography on Elon Musk a couple of years ago that I was just like, this man is not human. Like, I think aliens sent him down to our planet to like, give us a little shove forward or something. I don't know. So biographies can be really interesting. But one book that is so simple, I think it's called Who Moved My Cheese or something like that. But it's about change. And I like change. You can probably tell that. It doesn't scare me. I kind of thrive on it. But not everyone does. And so to read that book and understand how maybe other people process change really has helped me kind of rethink about that and be like, okay, it's not that this person just doesn't get it. It's just a different process very much. So, and then the other thing that I've been doing lately is watching Masterclass. I signed up for that last year, and I just watched Sarah Blakely's Masterclass. I watched Anna Wintour's, Diane von Furstenberg, Marc Jacobs, all the fashion ones, like I've been watching them. But, just listening to other people, just Starbucks, just lots of different business ones or design-oriented masterclasses that I've been watching. I find them very inspiring. Or there's always just like a little nugget that you go, oh, hey, I can apply that, or it just makes you think about something you're doing a different way. So I like to kind of bring that in from all over.
I love it. My husband and I just talked about signing up for Masterclass, so I think you just confirmed that that's what we need to do. He wants to listen to Bob Iger, and I want to do Sarah Blakely's. So where can the listener find you on the webs and socials?
Well, our website is bandedtogether.com, and it's banded the number 2 and then together. We're also on Facebook, on LinkedIn, Pinterest, and Instagram, of course. So banded or banded together.
And what about you?
I am
Are you on
mostly on LinkedIn and Instagram. Lisa Powers Struble. You can find me there.
Love it. And then, Lisa, how do you define success today?
I think it's just loving what I do and keeping the company alive and thriving and everybody happy. We have just a very great culture here where, we care about each other very much, and we cover for each other. And if someone's out, someone says, don't worry, I got you. And success for me is that it's building that kind of company and that kind of work family. And then obviously I have my personal family, which is fantastic. So to me, that's success. It's just helping others and being happy and, just going through life together as best we can.
I love it. I just appreciate your wisdom and taking the time to chat with us today. And thanks for having a cool company that gives back. I love it. So check out bandedtogether.com. Thanks for joining me. To subscribe, click the circular icon, and to watch the latest episode, click the video on the right. If you listen to podcasts, check out Her Story of Success on your favorite podcast platform. See you next time.